Hello, this is Mike Van Meter, and welcome to the Recovery is Possible podcast. Thanks for joining us. And as you know, this podcast exists to educate the public about addiction, recovery, relapse prevention, and just general wellness. And we want to bring all of this information to you so you can help yourself and loved ones, and because that's what we do in recovery. We help one another as we help ourselves. If you can, just visit us on our Facebook site and my website, which is vanmeterwellnesssolutions.com. And I am still in Ohio. I've done a couple of talks from Ohio, and the reason I'm in Ohio, I'm part of a post-critical incident seminar, which I do about 4 times a year out here, working with first responders from Ohio, and although they've expanded it to people from around the country, as a matter of fact. And the program is called Ohio Assist. And my portion of being out here is to talk to people about addictions, usually alcohol, but not always alcohol, and how people can help themselves. And I talk about the addiction itself and the progression of addiction and how they can just get better and seek help. So there's a lot of people that are out in the Assist program that contribute to the effort, because I've talked about wellness in this very toxic profession, in my world, police, law enforcement, but first responders in general, just how toxic it can be, and how we really need to be careful in taking care of ourselves physically, mentally, spiritually, all of those different areas. If they're not working properly, if we are not nurturing all of those areas, can have a very devastating effect on us long term. And so today, what we're going to do, we're going to be focusing on the spiritual side of that physical, spiritual, mental side. And we have with us Pastor or Chaplain Dan Vickey from Ohio PCIS. And I want you to meet him, and he's going to talk to you a bit about the role of chaplains, the role of spirituality when it comes to wellness. And for those of you that don't feel religious, don't panic. This isn't about religion per se. It's about spirituality, and it's about meditation, and it's about taking care of that part of your life. And no matter where you come from or where you are on that spectrum, there's things that we can all learn from. But throughout my years in the military and in law enforcement, chaplains have played a very important role in that. And oftentimes this is not really an area of law enforcement that we talk about a whole lot, but it's a very, very important part, and something I think it's important for you to hear, and I'm certain that you'll benefit from that. So with that, Dan, go ahead, tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do. Yeah.
Okay, Mike, thank you for inviting me to participate and be some encouragement to those. I am a pastor of a church in Fremont, Ohio, and been pastoring for 25 years. About 3.5 years ago, I was asked to be chaplain for the Highway Patrol, and been doing that for about 3.5 years. And through that chaplaincy program and the wellness, and part of the Ohio Assist and the PCIS, was invited to attend PCIS, post-critical incident seminars, and attended the first one in Cleveland about 2.5, 3 years ago. Was so impressed what was taking place, and was made aware of our first responders, our police, our fire, our EMS, that they're human and they have some real needs, and there are some things that they've experienced in life, and as you mentioned, the physical, mental, spiritual aspect of being well. And I could see where the transformation that took place in those 3 days. And it was exciting to see. I heard the stories of the pain. I heard the stories of lives that were on the edge of being destroyed. I heard the stories of folks that were on the verge of giving up on life. And the spiritual part of it is that there is hope. And no, I'm not going to get into a religious, that's for another time, but just as an encouragement to come alongside, because we are made up of the mental, the physical, the spiritual, and those have to be all in balance. And from attending that, I could see that there was a definite need. And it's been something, and I'm sure you've talked about, that through law enforcement is fairly new. The wellness, and I know being able to contribute to that, just to be alongside our dear friend Reverend Ellsworth was here and shared just the ministry of presence, and not really having. And one of the things I gleaned from him yesterday was we don't have all the answers. There are questions that are asked that we don't have the answers to, but we can come to this together and research and look for and see how it can help and see what God says in the situations. And so to come alongside folks and just to listen and hear the hurts and the stories, and then give some, not advice, I don't give advice, may just point in a direction and say, let's look at this, let's try that. How's that work? And to be able to encourage one another and pray with folks and hear and listen in presence has just been incredible. And there's an average of about 25 participants, and so over the 3 years, I've heard probably close to 300 different stories of how folks have been impacted. And it's not just the person, they represent a whole family unit typically. And so the ripple effect of the hurting the person, the police officer, the EMS, the firefighter that is hurting and needs just to come alongside and encourage and help is tremendous. So that's basically why I'm here, is to help and spend some time praying, spend some time listening and encouraging.
So on the spiritual side, this particular set that we have here, because if you're not familiar with what we're doing in this post-critical incident seminar, Chaplain Dan talked about how it's fire, police, EMS, and I'll even throw in dispatchers. We have a lot of dispatchers, and occasionally corrections, yeah. But that family, the whole first responder family. And this is a hard group, right? Am I pretty accurate? This is a pretty hard-bitten group, very, very hard-bitten group. I know in the work that I do in recovery, probably the hardest group to reach with a recovery message is this group. It's just, and that's just because they're exposed to so much. You know, those of you, if you're not a first responder and you're listening to this, I want you just to imagine what it would take in your life for you to pick up the phone and dial 911 right now. Whatever that event is likely going to be something that you remember for the rest of your life. You might even tell your children about it, your grandchildren. I remember the time that Grandma called 911 and the fire department had to show up. It's a traumatic day, and it's something that you remember for the rest of your life. Now, just think of this, where your job is you experience that person's traumatic event multiple times a day. When I was in the D.C. Police Department, it may have been up to 20 plus times a day. And you're seeing things that really no human being really should have to see. You see indescribable acts that one human does to another human being, acts of pure evil, selfishness, lust, whatever it may be. And you see it repeatedly over and over and over again. These are, and the survival mechanism is that detachment, building that shell, building that hardness. But underneath all of that is a human being and a spirit. And that human being and that spirit is related to other human beings. And Pastor, you just mentioned how that has a ripple effect on other people, families, wives, husbands, significant others. And we see that here at PCIS. And these are people that may not have been thinking about the spiritual aspect of their life for a very, very long time. But it comes out, doesn't it? It does come out. I know, and I don't know that I've ever shared this with you, but I really came to being in my spiritual life when I worked corrections. Because I didn't grow up in the church. I didn't. I had not developed. I wouldn't have considered. I didn't think that there wasn't a God. It's just that it was not something I really thought about up until I got into my first law enforcement job, which was corrections. And you may find this kind of interesting. This is where I really started asking questions about, it really was the spiritual world first for me. And then later I got into, well, what does this mean in the theological side of it? But my first law enforcement job was a corrections position. And I would go in to work and the door would shut. And I could feel the evil in the air. And I know you guys are listening, you're thinking, this is kind of creepy. I always use this phrase, I'm not here to impress or depress, I'm just here to express what I felt. And, in the jail that I was in, these are people awaiting trial, some of them for rape, murder, child molestation, some really evil people, and you could feel it. And then when I would walk out of the building and the door would close, I felt I could feel it lifting off of me. And I used to tell my wife, I said, I don't know what this is, but the Bible talks about spiritual principalities, good and evil, and out there. And I told my wife, I said, I feel it, I see it every day. Every day I go to work. And that started me on my spiritual journey. And, you flash to now, the people that we're working with are facing that evil every single day. And they've built up their protections, their barriers, that hardness. And then they need to escape from it, or else, just mentally you die. And what we do is we come up with those very very unhealthy ways of dealing with that. And in this program, I talk about addiction. For me, that was it. My escape was alcohol. For others, it may be drugs, it may be sex, it may be gambling, it may be whatever. And here, when the folks come here, and there's a reason why they come here. It's because they're kind of like at that end point where either themselves or their agency or their families have said, you need to do something about that. And I know in my life, how I really got out of my depths was really exploring the spiritual wellness, my spiritual wellness. We focus on the other things, the physical and the mental, but it really kind of starts with the spiritual. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, and that's part of, as I'm sitting here listening to you, Mike, is the struggles that I see as this gets built up, and then these folks have to get to go home to their families after dealing with this for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, the evil and that. And when they get home, they can't just turn the switch off. And so part of the spiritual aspect of it is to share some tools to be able to release that, you mentioned, the evil that they're dealing with. And some days are better than others. And I've talked to so many folks that said, how do we do that? I don't have a box where there is a door that shuts where, okay, when I get home, it's all different, I'm good. Mm-hmm. It carries out. And some spouses deal with it well, some families deal with it well. But the individual has to look at that spiritual aspect of it, because the physical is there, the mental is there, but the spiritual sometimes gets tucked away. And I know several police officers, EMS, dispatchers that are very spiritual, if you will, mm-hmm. and have a great relationship with God. And I can see the difference, the change that it's made in some of those spiritual conversations, how God impacts, how God protects, how God is real, whether you believe or not, but that there are different areas that we really need to focus on, and to give some guidance and suggestions as to some tools that you can use, and seen great results. Mm-hmm. God is good. And
we don't espouse any religion. We don't, no. This is not let's get you saved. Let's, right. Hey, you need to do this. This is an area to explore. Like, for me, to be honest with you, I think in some ways my spiritual life, my belief is almost stronger because I did not have anybody hit me between the eyes with it. I actually had to, the way I operate, my recovery was kind of the same way. I have to kind of figure this out for myself. And I had to see it because I am an investigator. I was, in law enforcement at that time. I needed to do my own investigation and see things for myself. Like I described, I wasn't reading about bad people. I wasn't reading about spirit. I was experiencing it. It was experiential. And it's important that I believe these things. It's not even really important that anybody or even you believe what I believe. But it's vital that I believe it. And the longer I'm around, the older I get, the more I see the truth behind it, because it has helped me. Because even if you're listening to us right now and you think, well, this is just a bunch of hokey pokey, the fact is, I've not found it necessary to have a drink or a drug in 9 years. And in my world, that's a miracle. And I didn't do that on my own. And do you stay in touch? I mean, do you hear from people once they leave here? What's kind of the relationship after this? This is a 3-day program. When they leave, what kind of impact has it had?
I have had stayed in contact with a few folks, and some are within a highway patrol, some are not. And that's an interesting question, because what comes to mind is one gentleman that, as we were listening to their incidents on the Monday, God works in mysterious ways, and I kind of picked up on this, and the gentleman looked pretty rough and tough and looked like he didn't want to be here. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, I would like to spend some time with him just to hear his story. It turns out he was in my group, and when I was in a peer group, small group, and I've been in contact with him a couple times a year, and he said that I started out, didn't want to be here, was voluntold to be here.
And you're like, yeah, I noticed that. I kind of picked that. You kind of emanated that.
Right. So, but as the day progressed and as we moved into Tuesday and we got to know each other a little bit and talk in the small groups, and you could see the walls come down. And there's been some amazing transformations that have taken place in his life, and some of the things that that's just one example of many that I could share. That it's been, and that's why I'm here, is to help facilitate that, because God loves all people, and we all struggle at times. I don't have all the answers, but I know that God does. Mm-hmm. And try to give that direction. And it's encouraging to me just to see a transformation take place.
Yeah.
And because, yes, this PCIS is a 3-day, but it's not. It's where we give tools, and it has to be a continuous thing. And encouragement, it's just amazing. Yes, I've kept in contact with some, and even when the riots and things were going on around the state, would send out text and say, hey, praying for you. And they would say, you have no idea how much of a difference, how much of an impact that makes, just knowing. As I go to work, as I go to this, to have things thrown at me and this and that, and the things I'm in the midst of, to know that somebody cares enough.
Yeah, and you raise a point, because this is an interesting time. So this is my first PCIS post-riots, right? All the world events, and we're in early March of 2021, so if this is years down the road that somebody's listening to this, I want to keep in mind we're in March of 2021, and so this is the first PCIS that I've been to post all of the big riots, the summer of 2020 and into late 2020. And law enforcement, first responders, that job has always been hard, but I think that it's particularly hard now, because these folks, not only are they dealing with what they normally deal with, but now they feel as though the public in the nation really has turned against them. And I'm not here to say whether that's true or it's not true. I'm not here for that debate. It's their perception and that's the important thing, is they feel like they've lost public support, and it's having a devastating effect on first responders across the nation. Devastating effect. And it's nice for them, and I can see in the small groups that I'm participating in how much they appreciate being here and hearing that they are appreciated, that people are thinking about them. And because they get into these depths, like you and I, I'm retired from the FBI. I can look at this from a distance. You can look at this from a distance. But these folks are in it. And when they're in that pit, like you and I can look down into the pit and say, hey, you're going to be back up here. But they're still there, and they're not seeing the top of the pit. And that can be a devastating thing. And in this last year, just in the last 6 months or so, last 3 months, in fact, I've seen more relapses of people that were in recovery, or people that began using or they're using increased dramatically. Suicides has been, folks, I'm telling you, I've not, in my world of people that I know, it's shocking to me how many suicides have occurred in the last 3 to 6 months. And it's not just that I'm more aware of it. No, there are more that are occurring. This has been very, very devastating. Have you seen that impact, or is that affecting your work?
Yes, I had an opportunity to go down to the State House and just walk around with some troopers that were there, and just in traveling around the district and even here at the PCIS, just engaging in conversation. And I even saw, and it's not just, and I know this is wellness law enforcement, but I saw a statistic on the news last night that was kind of frightening, that kids, teenagers, are more likely to die from suicide than they are of COVID.
Yes, and young. We're talking, not talking teenagers. We're talking young kids. Yeah.
So as I look at that and the impact that it's having, this is, and again, I know we're talking wellness for law enforcement, but it's just amazing what society, the transformation that's taking place, in it's because we lose hope.
Mm-hmm. In the isolation, and in fact, the news article that you're talking about was talking about how isolation, because we're designed to connect with other human beings. We're designed. Man was not meant to be alone, but yet we're forcing that. We're creating an artificial environment that we weren't created to do, and we have to. And we work here at Ohio Assist to really let these folks know, hey, you can't connect. But if I'm a young child and I'm not going to school and I'm not with they aren't going to Ohio PCIS. They aren't going to that, and it was like a several hundred, if I got it correctly, several 100% increase.
It was,
of rates.
And I just saw the headline, and it caught my attention, and I was taken back by that. That just thinking of, wow, where have we come? Where are we going?
Mm-hmm.
And what hope is there? So it's not just,
but there is hope out there.
Absolutely.
And the problem is that the way that our world is, the way that the public has turned on first responders, the way that we are isolating, it is important for people to understand that there is hope out there, whether it appears to be there or not. Now, it may be through Zoom, and I hate that, but that's what we're adapting to. And the one thing I like about the folks that are here in this program, because when all this COVID stuff happened and the world actually has started to shut down, there was one cancellation on a seminar that we did, but I got to hand it to the folks here in Ohio and the team that puts this together. They adapted, and they put together a program and a plan, and we don't like the Zoom. We don't like all because many of the meetings that we would have normally have had face-to-face here at PCIS is, we might be in one room. For example, my presentation, it was put out onto television sets into various rooms. It's not optimum. I don't care for that kind of teaching and lecturing and working, but it's what we got, and we adapt and we overcome and we find a way. And the folks here, and you, Pastor, have done a phenomenal job of adapting to that and providing the best service that's available, but it is there. It is there for people. And so if you're listening to us, whatever agency you're with, and if you're not in an agency, if you're somebody in some other profession, there are people there that you just have to reach out. Now, part of this is you have to reach out to get the help but reach out and get the help. And if that person doesn't give you an answer, then go to the next person, because there is help that's available. And I'm telling you, keep your head up. This will not last forever. This will not. This is ride the wave and get through it. Get through it. I mean, do you agree with that?
That's a great point, Mike. And that's why I tell my folks in the church that, God his hand is extended out to help. And he gives us promises. He'll never leave us nor forsake us, and we can cast all our cares upon him. But we have to take that first step. We have to step towards him and say, God, yes, I need your help. And we have to reach out to folks around us, and we have to make the first step. And it's not to shove religion or God, but it is the hope that we have in the world and that we have today. And that first step is you need to maybe make the phone call or maybe make a text or something, and to take that first step. And then, but don't, please just don't have a pity party and say, I'm waiting for.
I'm waiting for them to come and get me.
That reminds me of, if I could share this illustration of a gentleman that died and went to heaven and got to God and said to God, how come you promised and he was there, and a boat came by, and he said, no, I'm going to wait for God to come and get me. And a helicopter came by, and he said, no, I'm going to wait for God. And then, another boat, and God said, look, I sent 2 boats and a helicopter. What did you want me to do? and so we have to recognize the help that's there.
Well, it's what we were talking about. It's that God is in control, but God uses other people to affect his will. And I love that illustration. Like, I used a helicopter pilot, or I used the boat captain, and I sent it to you.
Right, you just didn't accept it.
But you have to extend, but you needed to put your hand out to take that life preserver or get on that boat. And, so there's a duality in that, and that is so true. And I love that illustration, and thank you for that. And thank you for joining us today.
Yes.
I really appreciate it, and I hope that this is beneficial to you. And if need be, folks, if you want more information on how to get help, reach out to us on our Facebook site, and which is Recovery is Possible, and my website, which is VanMeterWellnessSolutions.com. Do you have a website or anything that if anybody wants to get hold of you or hold of this program, anything that you can put out?
You could do, the Ohio Assist has a Facebook page, or our church has a Facebook page as well. And it's just the Fremont Nazarene Facebook page in Ohio, because there's about 10 different Fremont in the United States. But we have a Facebook. You can look that up and send a connection through me to me, and I'm available. So, yes.
Reach out to him, and you're right. And Assist does have a Facebook page and a website. And if you Google Ohio Assist, and you'll see the programs. And by the way, there's a lot of links on there, and I would imagine your Facebook site has links to resources. As I do on my website too. So the point being, folks, is there's a lot of information that's out there, and if what you're looking for isn't on one of those sites, you reach out to us, and we will point you. If nothing else, we will. If I can't help you, or if the pastor can't help you, or somebody from Ohio Assist, we'll at least point you in the direction of somebody that can. So with that, folks, thanks for joining us again. My website, VanMeterWellnessSolutions.com. Get us on Facebook, and look forward to seeing you soon, and thanks for joining us today.